Now that you've prepared your paper by labeling the different watercolor techniques, it is time for us to actually create them. I'm going to have you watch this first before you actually make them on your own. So the different ones we're going to start with are the flat wash and the glaze. A flat wash is probably what you've been doing your whole life with watercolors. It's taking one color and nicely, evenly laying it down on the whole piece, the whole area that you want it to fill in. What's really important is that you don't just hold up papers when you're doing a flat wash, because if you hold it up, it'll start to fall and get heavier on the bottom and darker. So remember, for almost all of these techniques, we really want to keep your paper flat as long as possible before we take it to drying racks and things like that. So I'm going to get my paintbrush wet in the water, wipe off any extra, and choose a color. How about, let's do orange. I'm going to do some spins with the brush. That means I'm using just the tip and I'm going round and round and round. If you are smushing and breaking the whole brush by just shoving it in there and moving all those bristles all around, I will take it away. Remember, you just put the tip in and you spin, spin, spin. It should be nice and bright on the very top. I'm going to do a nice even wash. So it's a flat wash. I'm not going to do anything special to it. I'm just going to go all the way across my paper. And if I leave it for long enough, it'll tend to even out and not look darker on one side. So, flat wash. That's all you need to do. Okay, glaze. The glaze is a two-step process. The first part is basically another flat wash, and then we call it a glaze, but really we're going to put something else on top of it and make nice smooth lines. It should make it darker or brighter and make it really interesting to look at. So I'm going to dip and get just a little more water. I'm going to use orange again. Spin, 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 spin. And I'm going to lay down basically another flat wash in the glaze area. I like to go back and forth in different directions to even it out. It's up to you how you do it. You don't have to fill every inch of the square. We want to be able to still read that label. Now I'm going to wait till this is dry to go ahead and add the glaze. But that's our first step in this process. While we wait, I'm going to show you salt. Salt is one of my favorite ones. I'm going to rinse out the brush. It's great for making things look like snow or just giving it almost like a texture. I'm going to choose a color that is darker so it shows up better for you guys. So I've got a lot of water on my brush. I'm going to come over to blue. Spin, spin. I just started getting water on it, so it might take a couple extra spins before it's ready. You're going to start with just a flat wash of a color for the salt technique. Make sure it's really wet. See how this is really movable and really wet? If it's really dry, it will not work. So it needs to be really wet. You should always have watercolors wet. Water's right in the name. Then right away, while it's still wet, you take a pinch, just a pinch of salt, not too much, just one pinch, and you sprinkle it right on top. Now, you leave it flat, and the salt is going to absorb some of that watercolor, pull it even out of the paper, and it makes little like star shapes or snowflake shapes. You'll know you've done it right if it is showing that the salt looks dark. If you haven't used enough watercolor, your salt's going to look white on the top of it. So let's give you an example of that over on the side. This is not what you want to do, so please don't look at this part of the video and go, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do? I'm still a little too wet. But say over here in this corner, I'll even take a second and dry off some of it. So it's really dry. Then if I put salt on, it looks really white. Can you see how white that is? Zoom in, make sure it's focused. It's really white. Over here, it's nice and dark. It means it's absorbing. You can already start to see it's pulling away some of the watercolors. This is not actually the right way to do a salt technique. Over here, this is. It's going to absorb so much more and make it so much bolder. While we're waiting, our glaze is now dry. So what I'm going to have us do is get a different color to use. Sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and use blue since I just had it. Give it a couple spins. Now I'm going to just make, how about a G for Miss Score? You don't want too much water on it. And you just nicely write right on top of it. And you'll see it's going to be so much darker and bolder than the other times that we use watercolors. So there's my letter G. You could make a shape, you can do a letter, whatever you want to do. But the whole point is that if this is dry underneath, it won't really fan out. It'll be really nice and bold. It should look maybe even almost like when you use a marker to make a letter or a shape. So if you're maybe doing a flower and you want to add a texture, this might be a great technique to use. Now while these two are drying and our flat wash is just about done, we're going to keep moving onto the graded wash. I'm going to probably do this twice, and when you work on it, please take your time, take some deep breaths, and really go slowly to do your graded wash. My brush is rinsed out. I'm going to do a really dark color. How about like a purple? I spin, 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 get that on the bottom of my brush. What's really important is you start with a lot of a color. So do some extra spins, make sure it's really dark. Then you're going to do one line. There's my really dark purple line. Take your brush, not doing anything extra to it, and just give it one little dip. Do you see how that is falling out of the brush? You can still wipe it off if it's a little extra wet. Do one more underneath it. Dip. Wipe off any extra. Do one more underneath it. It's starting to get a little bit lighter each step. Dip. Wipe it off. See how there's extra that I can take off. We don't want just water. We want it to be lighter. There's my next line. Dip. Wipe it off. Do your next line. Dip. Wipe it off. Do your next line. Don't rush this, because if you rush it, you're really going to end up with a bunch of water dripping all over your paper. We want it to get really, really light, and it's starting to fade out. It's graded wash. So graded means it's slowly getting lighter and lighter. So this should end nice and smooth. If it doesn't look smooth, you can always try and add a little bit more with that brush and even it out. But this nice smooth change from really, really dark to really, really light is what we want in the graded wash. I'm going to do it again. It is one of the more difficult techniques that you'll need to know. Let's choose a different color. I'll do green. Why not? Take green, spin, spin, spin. I do it extra long, get extra on that brush. I come over here, make sure there's not too much extra. I do one line, nice and dark. Dip. Wipe off any extra. Line underneath. Dip. Wipe off any extra. Make sure you're dipping all the way in. Don't be afraid of the water. Do my next line. Dip. Wipe it off. These lines are touching. I don't want to leave gaps in them because then it's just like stripes. But what I'm doing is I'm slowly pulling that color down the paper. Wipe. Make your line. Dip. Wipe. Make your line. It's starting to look like it's just water right now, but there's still a little color, probably because I've used so many colors in my water already. And there we go. It goes from dark to light. Alright, make sure when you do this, when you take your time, dip and wipe it off every single time. Wet on wet is a crowd favorite. It's really fun. I like to say that it blooms. You go ahead and you just use the water to make it all nice and wet. Now it's not dripping, soaking wet, gonna fall apart, but you pre-wet the paper. You get it wet. Then you're gonna use another color, and almost like the graded or the glaze, when you do something nice and smooth though, it's gonna fan out, it's gonna bloom, it's gonna spread. It's really interesting for water or just having something with like a fuzzy edge. If you want a crisp, clean edge, you're gonna need to go with something like the glaze. If you want this wet on wet, it's going to fan out, and it's really, really beautiful. You can mix colors, whatever you want to do. So I get my paintbrush just wet, wipe off, I don't want too much, and even though it might be hard to see on camera, I really am just making the whole area wet. All of it. Now I'm going to choose my color. I'll do green and blue, make it like water. Spin, spin, spin. Now, I've got it just on the tip, and when I make a line, let's get it a little closer to you guys. When I make a line, it's going to fan out. See how it kind of blooms and it spreads out? It's nowhere near the same as the glaze. It fans out because it's wet first. That's why it's called wet on wet. It's really fun to play with. You can do little dots and watch it move. I think it's super exciting. You can do colors next to colors, so you rinse out your brush completely. Let's do that blue like I talked about. Spin, spin. And now if I do some of those wavy lines, they'll start to probably mix next to each other. This one, you're going to see a little bit away of the paper. It's really difficult to cover every single little inch of it with your paint because we're just letting it be loose and letting it fan out. It's hard to control. So if you're someone who gets really close to your paper and really wants it to look an exact way, I would stay away from 101. If you're a little loose with it and you like abstract lines and shapes, I think it's a great one to use. It's really fun and people really love it when they see it in your picture. They'll go, "How did you do that? What did you use? What is that?" A lot of people don't know that watercolors can even do wet on wet. So, our last one, dry brush. It's pretty self-explanatory. We're going to have a dry brush. You definitely need your Kleenex for this one. So I'm going to choose a color. How about I go with that purple? Use it again while it's all ready. Paintbrush is wet. I go ahead and I do the spins. I get all that paint on the tip of it. Now, what's going to seem goofy, but is totally worth it, is you're going to do a drying off technique and just dry it off. You don't want it too dry, but you still want the pigment on there. So now when I go across, it's still a little wet. So I'm going to dry it again. Over here you can see I'm just taking little dabs of it. I'm not wiping it clean, I'm not smushing it, but it should eventually get to a point where it kind of fans out because it's so dry. So you don't want to destroy your paintbrush, but the ends of it will start to kind of separate out and it starts to look like tiny little crisp lines. So that's something that's going to be tricky to do. Maybe you need to, maybe I should have, and you should too, dry it first, then come back over here to where the colors you want to use. Dry it off again, and then maybe it'll work a little bit better. Yeah, see that? How you can see the texture that watercolor paper has? That's how we want to do our dry brush. So this might be something if maybe it's an animal fur or something in your picture. I don't want it to look smooth like these lines. I want it to look rough and textured like some of these other ones for the dry brush technique. So you'll dry your paintbrush first, dip into your color, and dry it again, and then go ahead and try and get that textured. Once you've done all of these, we just need to let it dry a little bit longer. If you struggled with one of these and it just didn't work, your salt technique doesn't show these little flower shapes. Your glaze fanned out because it was still too wet. Any of these that didn't work out for you the first time, once it's dried, you can ask for my help and we'll turn over your paper and try it again. Please try and show me that you know and understand flat wash, 2 parts, 2 glaze, the salt technique, the graded wash. You only have to do it once. I did twice because it is more difficult to learn. The dry brush, and wet on white.